A very good evening all. I'm Vadtal Lamba with the Wednesday night edition of South Asia News, Vision of Asia. We are coming to you from our studio in New York City. Welcome to the show. Let's begin by taking a look at the coronavirus pandemic. Globally, we are looking at more than 55.6 million cases of the coronavirus with at least 1.34 million deaths. In the United States, we have surpassed 11.4 million cases, and the death toll from COVID-19 in the US approached 250,000 today as the country recorded its highest number of victims in nearly 4 months. This is a chilling sign for healthcare system which is already struggling to cope up with COVID-19. Nationwide, number of patients hospitalized with COVID-19 topped 75,000 yesterday. The Midwest has now become the epicenter. In Wisconsin, more than 90% of its intensive care unit beds are occupied. For weeks, health officials and healthcare workers have warned that hospitals in all regions could soon become overwhelmed with widespread community transmission of the virus evident in many places. Government officials in at least 18 states representing both sides of the U.S. political divide have issued sweeping new public health mandates this month, ranging from stricter limits on social gatherings and non-essential businesses to new requirements for wearing masks in public. More on restrictions. New York City Schools District, which is the largest in the United States, will now halt in-person learning starting tomorrow as conveyed by New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. New York City joins other large district cities like Boston and Detroit that have recently also cancelled in-person learning to curb the spread of this disease. In Washington, pressure for a fresh COVID-19 relief bill mounted in the United States Congress, with Senate Democrats unveiling a new legislation to ramp up the national supply of personal protective equipment for healthcare and other frontline workers. Meanwhile, President Trump continues to not concede to President-elect Joe Biden, falsely claiming that the election was stolen from him. President-elect Joe Biden, with Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, continues to move ahead with transition plans without getting access to classified information by the Trump administration. Much on this ongoing political chaos tonight on the show, featuring key commentators and officials. Here are the headlines. Zohran Mamdani becomes first South Asian man elected to Assembly District 36, New York State Assembly. Veteran journalist Rohit Vyas on presidential elections 2020 and South Asian Americans, New Jersey. Vadtal Dham hosts Diwali Annkoot Utsav 2020 in Somerset, New Jersey. It's time for a short break on Vision of Asia South Asian News segment. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I am Vadtal Lamba and this is Vision of Asia Wednesday night episode of South Asian News. We continue now to present much updates on the very crucial 2020 presidential election results and the path moving forward. Today, President-elect Joe Biden criticized the Trump administration for failing to accept the election and said that his transition team needs access to necessary information to be prepared to tackle the pandemic beginning day one, and also noted that sharing of information is critical to vaccine implementation and distribution. Meanwhile, President Trump has refused to concede to President-elect and has blocked his administration from giving any resources or access to the incoming administration. Today, the Trump campaign said that it is seeking a partial recount of Wisconsin's presidential election results as a part of its attempt to reverse President-elect Joe Biden's victory. Lots happening here in the political world. We have tonight ITV Gold's senior political commentator Rohit Vyas giving us insight into what to expect. You know, while we're also talking about this, it's just not the national security which is at stake. We're talking about COVID-19 information which is also being withheld by the Trump team from the Joe Biden team. Just today, President-elect Biden said that more people will die of COVID-19 if the COVID-19 information is not shared by the White House with their team. The American Medical Association, AMA, is also urging President Trump to share this information. Where are we going with this? What does this truly indicate?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the American Medical Association, the Nurses Association, and a couple of other associations involved in the medical industry. The Hospitals Association, yes, that's the other one, the Hospitals Association. All their CEOs have come together and everybody has signed off on a letter to President Trump asking him to please have his team share with the incoming administration everything that we know about COVID, the therapeutics, the vaccines. Two vaccines are already out this week. or at least the pharma companies have come out with preliminary results that are very promising. In the case of Pfizer, it's a 90% effective vaccine. In the case of Moderna, it's 94.5% effective. Now, the question here is, okay, you have the vaccine ready. Now you need the machinery and the components to store these vaccines, transport them to distribution sites, and then to distribute them effectively and with speed to reach everybody in the US population. A massive, massive, massive job. And this requires coordination right now between the two administrations, the outgoing one and the incoming one. If there is no cooperation right now, there is no sharing of this health intelligence with the new administration, there's going to be a big problem. Biden has already warned that they're going to be behind by about a month and 20 days or 2 months in trying to figure out a distribution mechanism. That means you can easily lose another 150,000, 200,000 people. They could die because there's no vaccine out there that can reach them. There is a vaccine, but the distribution system is not in place to be able to get to them. That's what he's trying to talk about. That's what these CEOs who've signed all these urgent memos to President Trump are talking about. And they know. These are doctors out there. These are hospitals. These are nurses who are fighting. Right now, in at least a dozen states, if not more, hospitals are overwhelmed.
Yeah.
They are so overwhelmed that the individual governors, Republican and Democrat, have begun to issue their own directives on lockdowns, etc. They're trying to fight this thing by themselves because even they don't have any clear direction from the federal government right now.
Right.
And what Biden wants to do is to have a clear plan from the federal government once his administration steps in. So everything is coordinated, and together we fight this pandemic.
What do you think will happen on January 20th?
Are you asking me if Trump decides not to leave? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That's what you're asking? This question was asked of a lot of veteran reporters, many of them retired actually this week. And their answer was, and I have the same answer, we've never been through this before. Technically, at noon on the 20th of January, okay, Joe Biden will be sworn in as the new president of the United States. That means Donald Trump, whether he concedes or not, ceases to become the president of the United States. He also is no longer a resident of the White House, which means he is either a trespasser, and I'm giving you the technicalities of how this would work if that were the scenario. I don't think it's going to happen, by the way. But he would be a trespasser, or he would be a guest, or he'd be an uninvited guest, and he'd be asked to leave. Usually in a case like that, you would have federal marshals, the U.S. Marshal Service would be tasked with that. Because don't forget, Secret Service can't do it. Secret Service is there to protect the incoming president, and that'll be a stepped-up presence of Secret Service. And the Secret Service is also tasked with protecting for life an outgoing president. So the Secret Service, many people think, oh, Secret Service will pick him up. No, you can't do that. It's the U.S. Marshal Service, which usually would be involved, or federal marshals would be involved in things like evictions and that type of thing, that they would come in and take someone out or escort them out. I don't expect that scenario. I don't think President Trump would even think of that. I think all we're facing right now is a situation where he does not want to admit he is lost. And in all fairness to him, many people do believe he's done a great job in his time as president of the United States. Many people credit all the economic achievements in the country to him.
Right.
And so that has to be part of his legacy. And I don't think he'd want to leave or be asked to leave in that kind of manner. So I don't think we can even worry about a scenario like that. And most of the veteran correspondents who've been asked about this issue in this past week, just as you're asking me, have the same view and a very similar view that we don't expect something like that to ever happen. We hope not.
This month, we are celebrating the very popular Festival of Lights, Diwali 2020, an occasion celebrated by millions of South Asians across the globe. The festival, which symbolizes the victory of good over evil, light over darkness, brings much joy and laughter with its multiple activities, prayers, and fireworks. Amid the global public health crisis of COVID-19, this year saw limited, more intimate Diwali events to honor the festival following all CDC guidelines of mask wearing, social distancing, and washing hands. Diwali this year definitely brought a sense of hope and positivity for many. In Somerset, New Jersey, the Vadtal Dham held a Diwali Annkoot Utsav 2020 comprising of the members of the temple and the priests, again adhering to the CDC guidelines. Many spoke on the importance of Diwali for them and the community and its religious significance in Hinduism. Here is the story.
સર્વાવતારી ઈષ્ટદેવ ભગવાન શ્રી સ્વામિનારાયણ અમેરિકા તેમજ કેનેડા દેશમાં વસતા તમામ વડતાલવાસી શ્રી લક્ષ્મીનારાયણ દેવગાદી સંસ્થાનના શ્રી હરિના લાડીલા પ્રેમી વાલા ભક્તજનોને દીપોત્સવી પર્વ તેમજ નૂતન વર્ષની અનેકાનેક શુભકામનાઓ સહ અમારા અંતરના ભાવથી જય સ્વામિનારાયણ. વાલા ભક્તજનો, વિક્રમ સંવત 2077નો પ્રારંભ થવા જઈ રહ્યો હોય, દીપોત્સવીનો પર્વ ઉમંગ અને ઉત્સાહ અને ઉલ્લાસપૂર્વક આપ સૌ જ્યારે ઉજવી રહ્યા હો ત્યારે બહુ હૃદયથી વડતાલ ધામમાં બિરાજતા શ્રી હરિકૃષ્ણ મહારાજના ચરણ કમળમાં અમો એવી પ્રાર્થના કરીએ છીએ કે આપ દૂર દેશમાં રહ્યા થકા પણ જે પ્રમાણે નિષ્ઠાપૂર્વક ભગવાન શ્રી હરિના વચનોને વિશે નિસંશય થકા આપ સૌ સત્સંગ કરી રહ્યા છો ત્યારે સર્વ પ્રકારે આપ સૌની ઉપર મહારાજની કૃપા ઉતરતી રહે એવી એમના ચરણોમાં પ્રાર્થના છે. વહાલા ભક્તજનો, દીપોત્સવીનો પર્વ કહેતા પ્રકાશનો પર્વ છે. જેમ માટીના કોડિયામાં દીવડો પ્રગટાવીને દીવડો જેમ અંધકારને દૂર કરે છે તેમ આપણા જીવનમાં પણ જે કંઈ પણ અંધકાર હોય તે અંધકાર દૂર થાય એ દૂર કરવા માટેના પ્રયત્નોનો આ પર્વ છે.
માય નેમ ઇઝ હેમાક્ષીબેન. અમે અહીંયા મંદિરમાં દર્શન કરવાયા છે સમરસેટ વડતાલ ધામમાં. તો બહુ જ મજા આવી. અંકોટના દર્શન કર્યા, હરિકૃષ્ણ મહારાજના દર્શન કર્યા, રણછોડરાય લક્ષ્મીનારાયણ દેવના દર્શન કર્યા. બહુ જ મજા આવી.
અને આઈટીવી એશિયાવાર બધા જય સ્વામિનારાયણ. અહીં આગળ આજે અમારે નવા વર્ષનો દિવાળીનો અંકોટ ઉત્સવ હતો અને બધા હરિભગતો ઘરેથી ખૂબ સારા અને સરસ ભગવાન માટે નાસ્તા બનાવી લાયા અને બધાએ ધૂન ભજન કીર્તન બહુ જ સરસ કર્યું. ઇન્ડિયા યાદ આવી જાય એવું. અને સંતોએ બધાએ સરસ કથા વાર્તા કરી. ઇન્ડિયાથી મહારાષ્ટ્રીએ બધાને દરેકને અમેરિકામાં રહેતા દરેક હરિભક્તોને બધાને પ્રેમથી આશીર્વાદ આપ્યા છે. હેપી ન્યૂ યર્સ કહ્યા છે. હેપી દિવાળી. જય સ્વામિનારાયણ.
જય સ્વામિનારાયણ. આઈટીવી ગોલ્ડના દર્શકોને સર્વને નવા વર્ષના ભાવથી જય સ્વામિનારાયણ. આજે નવા વર્ષ નિમિત્તે અહીંયા દિવાળી પર્વ નિમિત્તે, દીપોત્સવ નિમિત્તે 3 દિવસનો તહેવાર હતો. કાળી ચૌદશનો ઉત્સવ થયો, હનુમાનજીનું પૂજન થયું, પછી લક્ષ્મી પૂજન થયું, ચોપડા પૂજન થયું, સરસ્વતી શારદા પૂજન થયું અને આજે અન્નકોટનું ઉત્સવ હતો. 56 ભોગનો દિવ્ય મહોત્સવ અહીંયા હતો. ઘણા બધા ભક્તોએ લાભ લીધો. સવારથી 6:30 વાગ્યાથી ઉત્સવ શરૂ થયો. પ્રથમ મંગળા આરતી થઈ 6:30, પછી 8 o'clock શણગાર આરતી થઈ, 10:30 અન્નકોટની પ્રથમ આરતી થઈ, 11:30 અન્નકોટની ત્રીજી આરતી થઈ અને 12:30 અન્નકોટની ત્રીજી આરતી થઈ. એવી રીતે 3 આરતીના દર્શન વારાફરતી થયા અને ઘણા બધા ભક્તોએ આ ન્યૂજર્સીના, પેન્સિલ્વેનિયાના, ન્યુયોર્કના, કનેક્ટિકટ સુધીના બધા આજુબાજુના ભક્તોએ લાભ લીધો છે કોરોનાના નિયમ પ્રમાણે.
બધા ભાઈ બહેનોને મારા જય સ્વામિનારાયણ નવા વર્ષના, અને સૌને હેલ્ધી રાખે ભગવાન. બસ એ જ મારી પ્રાર્થના છે.
Time for a short break. Stay with us on Vision of Asia, Voice of the Community election episode. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Vision of Asia, the South Asian news segment, and I am Aditi Lamba. We continue our special coverage on General Elections 2020 and the South Asian Voice. We have tonight another segment of our conversation with Zohran Mamdani, the first South Asian American man elected to the New York State Assembly, who will be beginning his term as an assemblyman in January of 2021 representing District 36. The 29-year-old is the son of Indian filmmaker Meera Nair and Ugandan academic Mehboob Bandani and is a first-time elected official now in the State Assembly. For Zohran, socialism is the biggest on his agenda with a focus on housing, justice and energy for all. He has also worked as a foreclosure prevention officer, a housing counselor, which opened his eyes to pro-corporate and pro-landlord policies in Albany. He says he's going to Albany to the State Assembly to fight for the most vulnerable and ignored communities, including South Asian Americans living in District 36. Here's Zohran on elections, his policies and his vision ahead, along with the causes that matter the most. Yeah, surely, housing is such a huge problem in the whole country. You know, your website says housing, justice, energy for all. I would love for you to reflect on the justice and energy part, especially the justice. Are you referring to the racial tension that's happening in the nation that we've seen across states this year especially?
Absolutely. I'm referring to what's been happening this year and what's been happening for many years prior.
Right.
Because frankly, our criminal justice system is not correctly named. It is not a system that provides justice. It's a system that denies it. And what we are seeking to do with this campaign and what many other candidates were elected on a platform of was to finally bring justice back to everyone, not just the select few. So what that means is, pushing to end cash bail. This country is supposedly founded on a principle that, you are innocent until proven guilty. And yet for so many people, when they are accused of a crime, not yet convicted, but just accused, they are then charged bail. And if they cannot pay it, they are sent to jail. And so what that creates is a system where the wealthy are able to be accused of a crime and they can go home and pay whatever the amount is. For example, Harvey Weinstein. But then the poor, if accused, are sent straight to jail. And we have people who spend months in jail. And I think that that's fundamentally unjust. And I think that we know across this country that the criminal justice system is racist. And yet we continue to put more and more, validity and power into that same system. And I think we need to take it out of it because I think we desperately need to create a safe New York City. And I'm quite confident in the fact that safety does not come from additional incarceration or policing. It comes from ensuring that our social services are fully funded and that we're actually looking at why crime occurs as opposed to the fact that it is. In terms of energy, that is an issue that is very close to us here in Astoria. Of all of the energy produced in New York City, Astoria produces half of it. And we have generating stations in the north of the district and also south of the district. We're talking about the Con Ed plants in the north. We're talking about Ravenswood plant, which is just outside of the district. And as a result of having these plants in our district, our air quality is worse than many other parts of Queens. And the consequences of that, you can see it in our families where so many people have asthma. And so when we're talking about energy for all, we're talking about bringing a Green New Deal back to Astoria and making Albany accountable to that. So right now in Astoria, there's an NRG plant. NRG is one of the largest fossil fuel companies in the United States. They are proposing to spend over $1 billion to create a fracked natural gas power plant in the north of Astoria. And what we are saying is that is absolutely not going to be something we accept. And we are in fact going to fight it every single day.
Definitely. Could you give us a little bit more insight into the new Green Deal? What are the major aspects of it? And, especially if you're coming from a socialist point of view, what are you agreeing with and what are you disagreeing with?
I agree with the Green New Deal entirely. And what I mean by the Green New Deal is a set of legislation that understands the stakes that we are in right now. This is not a normal time. We have a very limited time frame in which we can take action to correct the course of climate change. Right. And at this point, it is frankly something that is going to be more of mitigation than resolving because we've let it come to this point for so long. So what I mean by that is I believe, and many others do as well, that we must have a moratorium on all fossil fuel infrastructure, that we are at a point where we need to rapidly build publicly controlled renewable energy production, not at a point where we should allow private companies to build fossil fuel extraction plants or technologies across New York City and New York State. Because when we spend For example, with the proposal that's here, if we were to allow them to spend $1.5 billion on a new fracked gas power plant, we would have to understand that this will lock us into this production for decades. Companies do not spend that kind of money and then walk away from it. And we know that our future and our ability to actually stay and live on this earth in a sustaining way is built around curbing the fossil fuel emissions, not adding more to it.
Yes, definitely. Is this something that's on your first 100 days agenda?
I think it's difficult because I'm going to be a legislator, and so I don't have executive power. For
Right.
example, it's Governor Cuomo who decides whether or not this plant will be approved. As a legislator, what I can do is put on my first 100 days the kinds of legislation that I will sign on to and support, and this will definitely be part and parcel of it. I technically only take the office in January, but I've already been working on these kinds of issues, have been parts of marches, have been parts of, articles that we're writing, letters that we're circulating, and frankly, we are going to be escalating this fight even before January, because what we are facing right now is a crisis that we cannot afford to wait for.
Yeah, for sure. And let's just think about our future generations and the kind of environment they need to sustain. It's so important. I want to just backtrack a little bit on the racial justice side. I would love to know how you, throughout your campaign and now as an incoming state assemblyman, are looking at the Black Lives Movement. Because let's be honest, this is going to continue. Right, and I'm sure the new administration coming in would also be held accountable, just like the White House administration is right now held accountable for it. How have you looked at this movement, and what are you going to do about racial justice on day one?
I am extremely excited and extremely inspired by this movement. I think Black Lives Matter is a movement that is one which is bringing the limelight to the truth of this country that has been the truth for far too long. And, while I am happy to see the end of Donald Trump in the White House, we have to acknowledge the fact that Black Lives Matter as a movement began during the Obama administration. Just because Joe Biden is going to be in the White House does not mean that these issues will magically be resolved. In fact, what it shows is that the issue of racism is so deep-seated in our society, no one political party has a monopoly over it. It is in fact ingrained in the building blocks of this country. And in order to truly resolve it, we have to take radical action and have a true and honest look at what this country is and what it's been built on. And so for me, what I think that racial justice looks like and following the lead of Black Lives Matter looks like as a legislator is pushing for policy initiatives, whether it's taking money away from policing and putting it back into social services, whether it's ensuring that we do not have cash bail, whether it's ensuring that people whose lives have been ensnared by the criminal justice system, whether we can giving them their dignity back. So for example, many people agree that the criminal justice system is racist, and yet those same people are okay with the fact that incarcerated New Yorkers are unable to vote. So if we think that the system is unjust, then why are we giving it more power to determine people's freedoms? Additional to that, I think we have to make it very clear that when we talk about the worth of Black life, we do not simply discuss it within the context of criminal justice and crime and policing. We must discuss it within the entire context of being Black in this country. And so when we say Black Lives Matter, we must fight for it by fighting for single-payer healthcare, by fighting for a universal rent control, by fighting for all these kinds of government policies that give dignity back to New Yorkers, because we cannot pick and choose where we think that it's okay to be Black. If you believe that Black lives matter in front of police and within police stops, then you must fight for the same worth of that Black life throughout the entirety of society.
Well, this wraps up our show for the night, our special edition on elections 2020. Please send us your suggestions and get your voices and organizations on our show. Email us on events@itvgold.com or follow us on Facebook at itvgold. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel for free access to many of our popular shows. Thank you for joining us tonight from Queens, New York. This is Vision of Asia, and I am Aditi Lamba. Take care and be well.